back to the Voice of Texas, AM 700, KSEV, the morning show. I'm Chris Salcedo. That guy over there is Russell Sherrill, something we've been following because we are devotees, if you will, to the National Football League. The controversies that have been plaguing the league over the last couple of weeks. Ray Rice, of course, appealing his suspension from football because he struck his fiancee, now wife, and they had video of it. And the latest problem, if you will, of abuse, alleged abuse, comes right here from the state of Texas. An indictment handed down in Texas for Minnesota Vikings running back Adrian Peterson, who it was alleged struck his child and did some damage to that child. And so we're going to talk about the aspects of this with our next guest. Her name is Lori Vann. She's a licensed professional counselor, supervisor, who has studied and worked with abuse issues for more than 15 years. As a professional speaker, Ms. Vann has presented to statewide and local conferences on abuse and given numerous parenting seminars. Ms. Vann, welcome to the morning show here on the Voice of Texas.
Thank you.
All right, Adrian Peterson has said, look, I was disciplined when I was a child, and I credit that discipline with making me into the successful man that I am today. It's not an exact quote, but that's what he was trying to go for. You and I can agree that discipline's a good thing, I would think, but when you start leaving marks, that turns into something else besides discipline, especially when it's to a 4-year-old, which is who we're talking about. Adrian Peterson's son was 4 years old and was whipped with a switch.
Yes, I mean, you cross the line from discipline to abuse when you cause someone to bleed, get welts, or severe bruising. And I saw those pictures of that little boy's legs, and I work a lot with self-injury, and the thing is, that kid's legs looked equivalent to some of the self-injurers' legs that I've seen. There were so many different cuts on them.
All right, so what about this? You know, a lot of folks are out there, and it's causing a bit of a split in the parenting community, this, spare the rod, spoil the child type punitive approach, or those who believe that, that's detrimental to the psychological well-being of the child. And then I think there are a lot of us who are in the middle who believe that spanking is going to be necessary from time to time, but draw the line at leaving marks. How can we sort through this?
Well, I think spanking in itself is not inherently evil, but with any type of discipline, there are guidelines. There are things that you need to do, and I think with any type of discipline that you give or consequence, that the parent has to be in the right frame of mind, that they really need to make sure they're not angry, because if you're too angry, you're going to make, or you're more likely to make irrational decisions, emotionally based decisions, and that means you can have the risk of overreacting and becoming abusive when you use spanking. Or I've heard of plenty of other extreme consequences from parents that they did when they were upset. That spanking in of itself is not inherently a bad thing. It's just you have to make sure you're not angry at the time that you're doing it, that you set rules for yourself of, I'm only going to do X number of pops, and I can't even imagine going over 5. I think you get your point across with 3, and the younger the child, the fewer you need. This is about getting a kid's attention.
Well, here's the thing, too, because a lot of us, and how many times do we have this experience where parents go to the other extreme and believe in being their child's friend and reasoning with a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old, and that leads to the experience that many of us have probably had, where you have the little darlings running across a restaurant, creating havoc. You're trying to enjoy your dinner or what have you, and they're climbing over booths and under booths and creating all sorts of mayhem, and the parents are just sitting there looking adoringly, oh, aren't they being creative? Aren't they expressing themselves? And that seems to be the other side of the equation, where there is no discipline present in the home.
And that's a real problem, because consequences, boundaries have to start being set by the time the child is a toddler. And it's incremental. As the child gets older, you set more and more boundaries, and you have more and more consequences for them. The parents that are just complete hands-off and they don't do anything, they're the ones that are going to have kids ending up in my office 10 years from now because they're acting up so poorly in school. And the parent's like, I'm trying to discipline them, and I don't know what's going wrong. It's like, well, because you didn't set the standard back when they were a toddler.
Yeah, I get it. Let me read a statement from Adrian Peterson. Oh, by the way, we're talking to Lori Vann. She's a licensed professional counselor. Here's a quote from Mr. Peterson. I am not a perfect son. I am not a perfect husband. I am not a perfect parent, but I am, without a doubt, not a child abuser. Lori, you've seen these pictures, as you mentioned, of Adrian Peterson's 4-year-old child. If you were evaluating this as a case and you saw those pictures, would you say it was child abuse?
Absolutely, without a doubt. I mean, it's so upsetting to see that, especially on a 4-year-old child, and then reading his text of the genital area that was also struck doing this whipping with a switch.
All right. Lori Vann, she is a licensed professional counselor supervisor who studied and worked with abuse cases for 15 years. She knows what she talks about. Thanks for carving out time for us today here on The Voice of Texas.
Thank you.
You betcha.